Pittsburgh Steelers fans, Shannon White, Matty P here with another episode or set of episodes of the Steelers Global Perspective. I wanted to unpack something that I thought was interesting. You could barely hear the question because that's how Steelers press conferences are these days, where you can't hear the question, you can only hear the answer.
You hear the answer, yeah.
And when we get a non-answer, so I mean,
Yeah.
As someone that works in media relations, for companies, I don't understand it of how a multi-billion-dollar franchise can't organize a press conference. But anyway, we'll put that to one side. But one thing that Tomlin was clearly asked, not why we don't have the specific wording, was about the rookies and the age of rookies and how he would feel, with where they were at and in starting roles. And obviously, key pieces in. Like there are key pieces this year from the draft in Frazier and Fatanu and Roman Wilson and Peyton Wilson. Focus more on the Fatanu and the Frazier bit here from what I'm going to say. There's a lot of hype in the Steelers community around will they start rookies, will they not? I think I was pretty vocal, and I think you were too, about Broderick last year and starting Broderick, and they eased Joey Porter Jr. in. I get why they eased Joey in. I think they could have just started Broderick. But I guess there's sort of that trend and tradition that we've seen where they don't necessarily start every rookie, even if they're ready to go early on in the season. And so the question was clearly along those lines, because to Tomlin, it was, how do you feel about some of the rookies and the second year players coming in? And the first thing he said was, well, look, a lot of them are older guys that we've picked. I am of the belief that they are not going to start Dan Moore, so we'll talk about that from the offensive line. But do you think the Steelers will this year be a bit more open to starting, particularly with a whole new offensive coordinator and coaching staff? Do you think the Steelers, both on offense and defense, because we talked about Beanie and Roman Wilson, Peyton Wilson comes into play? Do you think we're more likely to see the Steelers rookies, if they're capable, and if their team think they're ready, start sooner than like waiting, 4, 6, 8 games in?
Well, I'm going to start with the offensive line, as you said. I think wholeheartedly, what purpose does it serve to start Nate Herbig for the first 2 to 3 games and have Frazier in the easier part of your schedule not getting a chance to develop? See, offensive line, that chemistry is so important. And you want your best 5 out there, regardless. And there's no way that Nate Herbig is as good, anywhere near as good, even now. See, if he knew the offense, let's say he just knew the offense and he was so skilled and well-versed in the offense, he doesn't. None of them know Arthur Smith's offense. They have not played for him before. So it's going to be starting over for Herbig and starting over for Frazier. And we know that Frazier is much, much more talented and has a much brighter future than Nate Herbig. Herbig is a career journeyman. So to me, it's almost like we're going to make you earn it. But I think that by at least the second preseason game, we're going to see Frazier in there. We're going to see Fuatanu in there. And this whole Dan Moore stuff, they just throw that crap out the wind. That's ridiculous. Unless you're trying to drive up his value for a trade. But, Frazier is so experienced as a 4-year starter at a Big 12 power conference. He is ready to come in and take over and give them something they haven't had since Pouncey retired. And even Pouncey's last year, he wasn't the same. So it's time. It's time. And these guys need to work together. Broderick Jones needs to be stuck on that left side and leave him alone. Put Fuatanu on the right side, leave him alone. Let him work in practice against TJ Watt. That's the best thing that can happen to him. Because if you can play against TJ Watt and be respectable, there ain't nobody in the NFL you can't play against.
Yep.
Now, the next thing about the age thing, I think that Mike Tomlin has more say this year than he's ever had.
Yep.
And I think last year we seen bell cow running back. We always said Tomlin loves the bell cow. Well, he went against his natural instincts, and he used what he had. And it was the best season for the Steelers running game because they had Harris and Warren, even though the offensive line was mid. So we see he will go against his tendencies. So this year, I think we will see, because Frazier has 4 years experience. Fatanu played in the national championship. And for a top offensive, the guy is supremely talented. Roman Wilson won the national championship. Peyton Wilson is 24, and his football IQ is off the chart. Career captain. Guy can wear the green dot, no problem. And he's insanely athletic. Did you see the clip today when he burst into the backfield on the quarterback? I think it was Allen. And Allen would have been dead meat, man. I mean, he was on him. Like somebody said, that looked like Shazier. That close and burst coming up the middle, it looked like Shazier. So, yes, to answer the question, I think that Tomlin realizes the talent, the age and experience level of the talent, and to be what they want to be this year, he's going to have to use it.
I think that's a crucial point. If they want to do anything this year, they have to use them, because there's so many. And I'll start the second year guys in there too, because when you think about, Porter and Benton and Broderick, and we start going through those sorts of blokes as well.
Nick Herbig. I mean,
yeah, exactly right. But they're just gonna have to use them. I will say this on the offensive line. I loved hearing from Fatanu that Dan Moore continues to text him and made sure he was ready for training camp and that sort of stuff. Like, at least Dan Moore, I will say this, credit where credit's due, he's being an ultimate professional, and he's doing himself favors if he is out of a job next year, from the Steelers side of things. So I think credit where credit's due on the Dan Moore front. But I agree with you on the Herbig. I did a show, like the show on the defense. I was going through and looking at how people had rocked up to camp and how they were looking and how they were feeling. Are they primed and ready? Now, I know Herbig is a round belly, but Nate Herbig looked particularly pudgy. And I know I'm affecting the trade value, but he looked pudgier than usual. Like, and I know he's got to be a big bloke. He's got to be he's an offensive line. Like, I'm not questioning that. Like, you're gonna have a round belly, but like, and you see that. Like, look at Faneca now in the size. Like, the guys running marathons, right? Look at Villanueva now, even, right?
Casey Hampton,
correct, right? Yeah. Like, you're carrying football weight. So with all of that, like, it's totally fair. But like, I think he looked at borderline a little bit out of shape, but that maybe it was just the shirt he was wearing and the way he was wearing. I don't know. I just thought that, but I do agree with you on the Herbig side of things. Like, you've known me in the Steelers community for a long time. I tend to pick things before they happen when it comes to finance. Like, I picked JJ going to Arizona, and that was like the 4th place on the list. I picked some certain things. I picked them trading Green last year. Everyone said there's no trade value for him. Like, no, they'll trade him. They'll move Dalton as well. I just can't see Herbig with that contract when you've got McCormick, when Spencer Anderson's sitting there. I can't see Nate Herbig when you can save $4 million on this roster. Definitely past the trade deadline. But even before that, because if you are hyping him up at center, like, maybe there's the trade value. But 2, if there's going to be some good players that get cut or released from other teams, and $4 million is a very helpful amount of money, right, to be able to go and get a guy on the cheap that might be usually a $7 or $8 million player on a 1-year prove-it deal. $4 million, or you sign him on a 2-year deal, depending on who the name is, and he's cheaper in the first year and it backloaded into the second year. Like, $4 million is a very helpful amount of cap when you've only got $16 million, and they can make more money very easily on this salary cap with restructures. I just struggle to think Nate Herbig is there past the trade deadline, and I struggle to think he's there to start the season.
But even more so than Herbig is Ogunjobi. Now, I mean, understand, I watch Ogunjobi every week, and I still say, what does he give you that justifies that contract? Because here's my thought process. Dean Lowry is a professional who I think could give you exactly the same thing that Larry Ogunjobi does at a much cheaper price. So if, say, DeMarvin Leal offers something and can give him something this year, and let's say Logan Lee surprises everybody with his familiarity with a similar system in Iowa, from Iowa, if he could be something, and you had to have a rotation there, because you could also slide Keanu Benton out there and use Fihoku at nose guard or nose tackle, or even Jonathan Marshall. I think that's his name.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, what does Larry Ogunjobi give you that makes him untouchable? I don't see it.
It's what he doesn't give you, which just makes him untouchable. It's the $8.23 million in dead cap hit.
Well, I mean that's true. I mean,
he does save you $5. He does save you $5.
They're not going to just eat that, but yeah, but you're still eating $8, right?
Yeah, exactly right. So unless you're getting a trade, and I mean, Leal would have to have a miraculous, preseason in terms of games and training camp for you to be feeling fully confident though at that. That's why it's a little bit of a shame Dean Lowry's on that pup list. But you're not wrong. Like it could well happen. Again, think about this: if you can move Herbig, you can't move Ogunjobi. And you go, you get the scissors out and it's bye-bye. That's $9 million there. $9 million could get you what is a wide receiver 3 on some teams right now, which is the wide receiver 2. I'm not saying they need to do that. I think they've got what they need from a receiver perspective, but just the idea of that cap money and how it can be deployed, well, that's money to re-sign Cam Hayward, actually restructure this year's deal and extend him and create cap there and spread and have more money to give him a signing bonus up front. Like there's this isn't Kevin Colbert. Omar Khan is a wizard when it comes to these numbers. So when there's guys that are holding up these salary cap chunks, and when you've got so many talented young guys, we've got to, as a Steeler fan base, be really open to they might do some things that still feel strange and unfamiliar, but actually on paper are incredibly intelligent and prudent.
The Steelers have more cap space than they ever have this time of year. This is very, and everybody's like, well, there's that wide receiver. They're going to get a wide receiver. I don't think so. They asked me in a recent podcast, and I said it then, and I'll say it now. I want another defensive lineman. Because to me, that's my biggest concern. Because Cam Hayward is old. He's coming back from a bad injury. His core injury was not only in the groin, but it went up into his abdomen. It was a major surgery, something very hard to come back from at his age. They're going to ease him in there, but I'm concerned about that. Then you got Larry Ogunjobi, who's basically a body that you throw out there that's functional, but he can't stay healthy. He can't practice. He doesn't offer you anything above just average. And that's stretching it. I think what they ought to be doing is if they're exploring a trade or something, because there's really nothing on the free agent market right now, I would like to see another defensive lineman.
Yeah, I can see where that comes from. If they hadn't got Sutton, I would have been banging the drum louder. But Sutton being out for 8 weeks, I'm a little bit like, what's he really solving apart from being a cheap option if one of the young guys doesn't turn out? Because there's a world where Trice and Rush both turn out, and there's a world where both of them don't turn out as well, right?
What's your bet
on either of those two?
I'm gonna be on record as I think they both.
I know you're Rush. I know.
I think they're both going to turn out.
I don't think they're going to be. It's a tough thing to say. We've not seen Trice, on Sundays. We've barely seen him finish. We didn't even finish a camp. Because I really like what I saw out of Trice coming out of Purdue. I had him as an early day 3 pick, late day 2 pick for the Steelers. I had him there, and in fact, we got him when we did. I was thrilled. When we did that live broadcast, he was in my top 75 players for the Steelers across the 3 days. So I don't like saying this against Trice, but if Trice could have Sutton's career up to this point in terms of the amount of starts and stats and all of that, I think you'd have to feel pretty happy with that given the situation he's in right now.
Well, this year, neither Trice or Rush have immense pressure on them because there's going to be Jackson, there's going to be JPJ, and I think they can work them in there, use them in certain packages, and I believe that if Trice can stay healthy, I think that's his only hindrance. Because watching him, what I've seen, I believe he's an NFL caliber player if he can stay healthy. Now, for Rush, it's different because Rush is going to have to show that he's got speed, but can he flip his hips? There's things that he's struggled with, and I think cost him the opportunity with the Colts. And he likes to keep things in front of him. So, we're going to have to see if they are more aggressive. Can he, handle that man coverage, press man? But I do think he's got a future as well. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think Trice is more likely than Rush because they picked him and invested in him. I know that one day I won't have to talk about it anymore. I still think you need another strong safety, to be honest. I am deeply worried that outside of Deshaun Elliott, I know Ryan Watts could be that, but I still think you need someone that's the other side of 210 pound out there, that even if they're a young guy, like, if you could go and trade for like Nick Cross and I'm not saying that they should do this, but I'm just saying, like, I'm talking hypotheticals because there's a couple of our subs that always get on me about trades. But if you could go and get someone like a Nick Cross from like the Colts, or, I want to see a slightly bigger guy, because what if you do need to use Deshaun Elliott in the slot? What if Minka does go down? Deshaun Elliott, you can move into some of the packages that like Minka does. I am still worried. There is no one back there that's bigger and beefier. That's it, right? So I think that's another area that if the Steelers add, and it's probably not going to be a name that we all know, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers to bring in more traditional strong safety help. And that's no slight on Deshaun Elliott. It's just making sure that Deshaun Elliott can play without fear, basically. Because
I think another reason I think that Darius Rush will have an opportunity is that I think eventually Darius Rush is going to be a safety.
Interesting.
And I think that Ryan Watts is the safety, but he can offer slot coverage. And even on the outside, he was not terrible. When he looked bad when he went up against Oduzze and some of the top wide receivers, but he was hanging with them. He just had like ball awareness. And I think that he could give them a lot. He's versatile. But Rush, if you watch Rush, he's very effective because of his speed with the play in front of him. He doesn't do as well with his back to the play. So that's where we're going to have to see about him. But at safety, you wouldn't have to worry about that.
I don't like a strong safety under 208 pound. It's just a thing for me.
But he can easily play at 215.
Rush?
Yeah.
That's a lot of weight to put on, though.
It's 7-8 pounds?
In a season? I don't think he's that heavy. I don't think he's 208.
No, I'm talking about eventually.
Oh, eventually. No, eventually.
I think eventually
I'm more about
this
season. I'm talking about like this. I'm talking about this season in this context. Because I think they can go and grab a guy in the 3rd or 4th round next year.
Yeah, right now you've got Elliott, Watts, Killebrew. If he's going to have any position on defense, it's strong safety.
But
and he's mainly special teams. Yeah. But he can give you a few snaps. But Elliott can, as you said, move to free safety. But I don't even know, is Kazee going to make it?
But my thing even with Ryan Watts is listed as 206. There's a difference between 206 and 213, 214, 215, like especially across his 6'3" frame. He can put that on. That's not my issue. But I think Ryan Watts needs to be a little bit careful about, the way to get on this roster at the start for him is to be the fifth cornerback or the fifth cornerback and a special teams guy that can play at safety reps, but not having to do too much. I worry sometimes. I think the Steelers ask a little bit much of some of these guys to be too versatile, or as we know, the Steelers pigeonhole people, and it's like that's not their best position. It always seems backward, like Watson should have been a right guard. Why you a left guard? And there's other guys that they're not as versatile with. So. And look, you've said it before. I know Peyton Wilson fills in. All I'm saying is like, if I'm going to add a guy, I would feel really not to have a 3 safety rotation like we see at the moment with like, and it's not really a true 3 outside linebacker edge rusher rotation. But the concept of having the ability where if Highsmith misses a game or what has to miss a game, you bring in Herbig, you're losing of course you're losing something. But it's not like having Malik Reed there or Quincy Roche there or any of the other blokes they've had fill in there or Taco Charlton, who did absolutely zero for this team.
Yeah.
So I do worry about that with safety because with this, and people say, well, it's not that important a position and it's all about offense. But this defense has had problems when we have a key injury at any level of the defense, whether it has been inside linebacker at the start last year. Then it was Cam Hayward. Then Minka's playing, out for 4 to 6 games, whatever it was, and then playing with a broken hand. Like, I don't want the Steelers looking really good and looking like they can do something and for all fall apart because we didn't make what should have been a much easier decision before the season kicked off. That's my concern.
I agree with what you're saying, but here's my thing. Last night on the podcast, they asked, who's more indispensable, TJ Watt, George Pickens, or Najee? No, it wasn't Najee Harris. It was somebody else. And everybody said TJ Watt. I said, okay, who else do they got besides TJ? Now they got Alex Highsmith. They got Nick Herbig. They got Jeremiah Moon. They got, whoever else. Who do you got behind George Pickens that can do George Pickens' things? Nobody.
Correct.
So I said George Pickens.
Yep.
Because that's what happened when Watt went down. There was nobody that could even offer above average play. Now they have that. So that's what I'm talking about now. At defensive line, who do you consider on that defensive line to be above average? Keanu Benton. Who else? Cam Hayward, maybe? We don't know yet. Who else? That's it.
Well, no, I agree with you. I'm just saying other than defensive. You said your question to me was other than defensive lines. So.
In the secondary, I think they got a lot of versatility, guys that can move around. They got far better speed than they've ever had. Then you look at the linebacker position. You can do so many things. Watt and Highsmith could drop out, and you could rush Queen and Wilson. You could take Roberts up the middle. You can, when Holcomb comes back, oh my gosh. I mean, the middle of the field deep, they've got. Yeah. They've got covered like they haven't been able to in the past. When I look at it, what scares me is that defensive line.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you in any sense of the word at all. But it was just that you said other than defensive line.
Yeah.
But I'm like I don't know. He's really emerged for me over the last sort of 6 months. I'm very hopeful for Fehoko. I actually think Fehoko, I know he was on the practice squad last year. They're not bringing him back for no reason. I think Fehoko, and it's why I actually think they've still got Jonathan Marshall there. I think they're using Jonathan Marshall to push Fehoko. I'm quite high on Fehoko. I think he could, if he can make this 53 and be a really valuable player for this team.
Who was his biggest supporter last year?
I know.
I've loved Fehoko. I thought that they was going to use him, and they didn't.
Oh, Bernie, who comments on our shows, he's a massive Fehoko guy.
But now you got Fehoko, and you have Marshall. You have Fehoko, and you have Marshall. And everybody's talking about, it's going to be Ogunjobi and Benton and Hayward. Okay, that makes no sense, okay? Let's think about this. Let's be honest. Cam Hayward, his best attribute is he's strong. That's one of the strongest guys in the league. And he can anchor. Now, I know he don't like to play nose tackle, but tough titty. They need him at nose tackle. to tie up blockers and all, because he is not the pass rusher he once was. Okay, Keanu Benton, today or yesterday, said he weighs 300 pounds now.
He looked light. He looked light.
He lost 15 pounds this offseason.
Insane.
15. That's a man who wants to be quicker. That's a man who wants to play end. That's a man who wants to get after the quarterback and set it, be a good anchor and on defense against the running game. And like we said, Ogunjobi is just a body. But everybody's saying Ogunjobi and Cam and then put Benton in the middle. I don't see putting Benton in the middle, especially when he lost 15 pounds. If that was the plan, he wouldn't have lost 15.
And that could be, we talked about it. This could be Ogunjobi is on the outer. Maybe they are looking for it. Maybe they'll look for a trade first. They don't do it. They release him.
I mean, I just
because they're not gonna you and I talked about moving Cam inside for the sake of his career. I talked about that again probably 2 years ago. I said it would extend his career. Yes, and especially when I thought that Alualu was a little bit older to bring back.
But you're not going to make $22 million.
No.
Hey, nose tackle.
True. But if he doesn't,
that's why Cam don't want to play nose tackle.
But if he's not going to play it, then yeah. Well, I mean, Cam's got to decide. I mean, I saw this in the offseason, and who am I to say just a guy over in Australia? But you got to decide. It's a Le'Veon Bell situation. It's an Antonio Brown situation. Do you want to win a Super Bowl? Do you want your legacy? You've made Cam Hayward is he's in the top. I said if he plays out this year at this contract, he will be a top 8 all-time interior defensive lineman for payment over the course of his career at this point. Top 8.
Yeah.
Is he the 8th best interior defensive lineman to ever play? And I know that's a difficult thing to say because people have played in different eras, so they earn less money. Obviously, he's not the 8th best interior defensive player of all time. Obviously, yes. That's not the case. But even in his era, is he top 8? Probably. People will sit there and list other. All I'm saying is that he's made enough money. He's not made enough money. You're always entitled to go chase more. But I would have thought at this point of his career, you want to win a Super Bowl.
Let's talk about legacy. His legacy, if he retires with the Steelers, plays another couple years, people will talk about him. They put him up there with Aaron Smith and L.C. Greenwood and all these all-time greats. I'm not because, again, no Super Bowl. We haven't seen what we've seen from these guys. We're talking about Aaron Smith was the most selfless guy that you'll ever find on a defensive line. The guy he sacrificed what he could have been statistically and got multiple Pro Bowls to have the best defense that's out there. But when we talk about legacy, you would go somewhere else, you make $1 million more here or there, right? Okay, Le'Veon Bell, you mentioned him. He went to the Jets. He was on a Hall of Fame trajectory, and he went, crashed. Now, how many autograph sessions does people come back and say, hey, we're having a legacy signing, and they pay him to come in and sign autographs? Rocky Bleier still makes money off of his Steelers career. He's still relevant. Nobody even knows who Le'Veon Bell is anymore. And in another 10 years, he'll be gone. I mean, nobody will think about Le'Veon Bell. He could have been a Hall of Famer trajectory, and he sabotaged his legacy. Now, that's a decision Cameron Hayward's got to make. Because if he goes somewhere else, especially and competes against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's going to be viewed totally different. And so your long-term value and making money years after you're retired, Franco Harris, we miss him still. That man made money to the end off of his legacy.
Jerome Bettis.
All of them. They're still relevant.
Yeah, but I guess 100%. Going back to your point though, the fact that he won't play interior, or playing interior, but the fact he won't play nose tackle specifically, or doesn't want to, or is going to take pushing there. And we do talk about Benson losing that weight, and we do talk about Fehoko rising. maybe as we've talked about this, Ogunjobi is on a bigger of a bubble than we thought, and maybe the Steelers are happy to eat another 8 million in cap, dead cap hit. Maybe that's as you work your way through the discussion, you're like, okay, it kind of makes more sense as we talk about it. You know what? I think looking ahead, and by the time this part of the show comes out, maybe he's already done something. As Omar Khan said, end of day 2. It is a long way between now and the 8th of September when they play their first game. So we just have to remember that. But as always, go Steelers.